Alright, welcome back to the final chapter of Yojimbo by genre. I'm going to try and keep my recap as short as possible because we're now at the ragtag multitudes of genre-hopping Yojimbo movies, and we have a lot of ground to cover.
Rapid fire delivery, that's part of my style. Everybody's got to have a style.
Okay, so far we've gone from one historical event of the Union busting done at the Anaconda Road Massacre to a 1920s pulp crime novel written by one of the best hard-boiled writers ever, Dashiell Hammett, to 1960s Japan where Akira Kurosawa, one of the greatest filmmakers of all time and certainly one of the best Shambara filmmakers, made one of the best samurai films, namely Yojimbo. And then we go to Italy where one of their best directors, Sergio Leone, spawned an entire genre of the spaghetti western and made one of the most archetypical examples of it based on Yojimbo. The Coen brothers, Walter Hill have all made Yojimbo movies, only the best and most prestigious... Oh, it's David Carradine. Look, to be fair to him, Carradine has some real classics to his credit. The Kung Fu TV series Kill Bill, The Long Riders by Walter Hill, but there were also lean times where Carradine took the work that he could get. This is one of those. The Warrior and the Sorceress from 1984 is specifically in the sword and sorcery subgenre of fantasy. If you want to know the difference, think more Conan, less Lord of the Rings, a little bit more He-Man, and a little less Princess Mononoke. It's very clearly a Conan-inspired entry. It makes sense. The sword and sorcery genre was hot off of Conan the Barbarian in 1982, Beastmaster, Sorceress, Deathstalker, Krull, Fire and Ice. I think Conan the Destroyer might be 1984. If someone said to me at that time that we could do Yojimbo in that world, I would have been excited, totally excited to see that movie. There was a place for it. It had just been hampered by a lack of budget and time, maybe inspiration as well a little bit. It's cheesy as hell. There's even a guy in it that looks just like Hedonism Bot from Futurama.
I trust the orgy pit has been scraped and buttered?
I will pay 2 taraks and give you the shelter of my house till you die.
Anyway, this takes place on a planet with 2 suns, naked slave girls, and everyone speaks perfect English. It's ridiculous.
Have you seen it?
As a matter of fact, I have, and it's pretty great.
Okay. I don't know which one of us is crazier, but okay.
Carradine spends the movie in a cast after having a tantrum and punching something and breaking his hand. You'll notice he wears a big gauntlet glove thing throughout the movie, and this is specifically to cover up the cast. Here is an excerpt from the Kill Bill Diaries by David Carradine, page 41, the only time in the whole book that he talks about it. He says, The Warrior and the Sorceress, a Corman movie shot in Argentina in the early 1980s. Yojimbo on another planet. I come off more like Clint than Toshiro. This picture has a Sergio Leone quality too, if produced by Joe Levine, though the Hollywood Reporter thought the fights might have been edited by a blind man. All that and no explanation for his giant codpiece.
Dark One, Master Vikas beats you!
Okay, hilarious codpiece aside, the movie is still a reworking of Yojimbo, and as such, has a bunch of familiar elements. The poncho, the crusty border town, the warring gangs.
Zeg, the tyrant, that's who. That's his compound there. His enemy, Balkaz, there. Each of these scum pits his hired soldiers against the other for control of the world. It's the poor villagers caught in between who suffer.
And he gets beat up. I mean, I know that sounds generic because heroes get caught and beat up in thousands of movies to be sure, but this is a very deliberate scene as we've seen in the previous chapters where the antics of our hero catch up to him, the beating is usually quite brutal, and it's a turning point in the movie. And I think I'm going to mention that there's the naked boobies again. I think I have to. 1, it's that kind of movie. We're talking about exploitation film all the way. And 2, I'm from a generation that, like, if you just mention the three-breasted mutant from Total Recall in passing. It's like an instant touchstone with people. Everybody that's of a certain generation just remembers it. It's burned into our primitive reptilian brains or whatever. So how did a four-breasted exotic dancer with way more screen time escape my notice? I mean, if this is the kind of movie that you're looking for, it's gonna deliver for you like crazy. It's fun and it's stupid. It's a stupid fun Yojimbo. A Viking movie?
Absolutely. I can explain. It's all perfectly logical.
Is it, though? I mean, it's already a misleading graphic, since technically this is a story about a Celtic guy who gets revenge on Vikings for killing his parents and stealing his sister.
I won't tell anybody.
Well, I think we just did.
Well, that isn't the point.
True. The point is that it still employs our familiar Yojimbo themes. When the Raven Flies, aka Revenge of the Barbarians, came out in 1984 in Iceland, which is cool because I realized this is my first Icelandic film.
Holy jumping catfish.
And then I wondered, well, like, how many Icelandic films could there even be?
Well, we'll send you to school. Learning can be fun.
Well, it turns out that there are quite a lot, and this is the only Icelandic movie I've seen, even though they've been nominated for a number of Academy Awards. Still, that didn't seem right. I mean, I've never seen a movie shot in Iceland, and then way down at the bottom I found a list of mainstream American films shot in Iceland, and yeah, I've seen almost every single one of them.
You got a gift, my friend.
When the Raven Flies is also the first of a loosely connected trilogy of Viking films, some call the Raven Trilogy, with In the Shadow of the Raven in 1987 and The White Viking, or Embla, in 2007. The second two don't have anything to do with the Yojimbo plot, so we're just going to talk about the first film here. But it's fun to know that in the great tradition of Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy, the Mad Max trilogy, and Rodriguez's El Mariachi trilogy, that they all share this similar disjointed connectivity between them as they evolve and get larger in scale and mythology with each film. All three are directed by Ron Gunlofson. Now, it's true that this doesn't have the two gangs at war dynamic, which in the last chapter I used to disqualify El Mariachi from this list, even though in its disqualification it was kind of included here anyway, right? This is just, it's more than just stylized in a generic way. Some scenes do play out in pretty direct comparison here. And this is by design, as the filmmakers cited Sergio Leone as inspiration. And that's likely why the score by Hans-Erik Philipp also has this great, weird rhythmic drone. It's atmospheric and moody, like an Ennio Morricone score. Now, let's head into the wastelands. Welcome to Albert Pyun's Omega Doom, released in 1996. And I have to call it Pyun's Omega Doom because I think Pyun's body of work really overshadows Omega Doom, and his directing is the feature of his films that make them stand out, for better or for worse.
ROMs, late model warrior hardware, the ultimate in killing machines. Droids, slightly older hardware, equally lethal. They have a bit less memory, but are quite good at adapting to any combat situation.
This is definitely not the best.
Take some advice. If I were you, I'd keep moving on. Skip this town.
We can always skip it.
No, I think I'll hang for a while. Check things out.
Okay, well, some people love Pyun as a B-movie king of sorts, but overall I think your average viewer is just going to think this is crap.
Maybe I can make them understand the error of their ways.
I don't know about that, but let's take a moment and set up just a little bit of context, right? Albert Payan is sort of a modern-day Ed Wood. He is known for the lowest-budget movies. He claims to not have any affinity for cyborgs, despite directing at least 6 cyborg movies, including the JCVD movie Cyborg and all 4 Nemesis movies and more. Post-apocalyptic movies are just an easy vehicle for sci-fi on a low budget. Like how horror movies get made, you know, it's just a bunch of kids out in the woods and fake blood is really cheap. Well, so is collecting trash, calling it a set, and then saying it's 20 years after the nukes went off. A few other Payan movies to note would be Captain America from 1990, Doll Man with Tim Thomerson, Radioactive Dreams. Somebody's just gonna say that I'm picking the peanuts out of the poop here. But that's exploitation movies for you. Now, there isn't that much that is all that specific to Yojimbo aside from the very basic plot structure, though the Ennio Morricone style score, it's worth pointing out. But most of the movie is really stuff like this here, and actually, in my notes, I literally called this the Chunk Chunk fight. And everybody walks like RoboCop. A couple other notes on the post-apocalyptic Yojimbos. Many would rightly point out that there are some familiar dynamics in Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. And for the first reel, this is true. Mad Max is the stranger, and Border Town's the corrupt city run by 2 contentious factions who use Max as a weapon between them. The problem is that after the first third of the movie, Max is out in the wilds with the children, and the entire Yojimbo premise falls away completely. I think so did most audiences at that point. People also reference Cold Harvest from 1999, but I gotta keep it real with you.
I believe in being honest. No bullshit.
It's not actually related to the plot at all, it's just using a play on the name. Red Harvest by Dashiell Hammett, right? Famously, another play on the title was Blue Harvest, which as many know was the fake title of Return of the Jedi, so people wouldn't know at the time that a new Star Wars movie was filming, and that's why Family Guy used it.
That's the joke.
And moving on. Desert Heat with Jean-Claude Van Damme, 1999, aka Inferno. I don't know why it's called Inferno, but I've got a theory. A terrible, ridiculous, and overthought theory. We'll get to that in a minute.
I can't wait.
So we got Van Damme, Danny Trejo, Mr. Miyagi, Jamie Presley. We got a fun cast here. I love this movie. It's so unconventional, and much of this movie, people would argue, doesn't really work at all. But I think even the unintentional comedic moments come to the rescue when the production falls short.
What the hell's the matter with you?
I like cheesy movies. Case in point, the movie opens with Van Damme riding through the desert on his way to give this cool motorcycle that he's riding to his friend Danny Trejo. When the bike breaks down, he gets drunk in the middle of the desert and talks to his friend as like a hallucination or a spirit or something. And that's just the first scene in the first 5 minutes, okay? So it's already weird, and drunken acting from JC is as ridiculous as it sounds.
I had this dream about the devil. He reserved a whole floor of hell just for me, Johnny. What do you think about that?
If this is not at all appealing to you already, then you are not going to like the rest of this beautiful hot mess. But yeah, it is a Yojimbo movie with Van Damme in the middle whittling down 2 gangs that run a podunk town.
They're gonna kill you. And if the Hogans don't, then the heathens will. Heathens? They're in the dope business with the Hogans. Hey, what do you say we do a little divide and conquer?
But the flavor that they're seasoning it with is sort of mixed with 50% of it being U-Turn by Oliver Stone. If you're not familiar with U-Turn, it's a movie where Sean Penn, on the run from the mob, I think, his car breaks down and he can't get out of this really bizarre town with all these eccentric weirdos. They're the best.
The name's Toby N. Tucker. People around here call me TNT.
Desert Heat becomes this quirky and peculiar movie in Van Damme's canon at large, and it's a mostly overlooked, maybe not like a gem, but like a candy that fell on the floor and under the couch. But like, even though you got to it after 5 seconds, it's already got fluff on it, but you still pull the fluff off and the candy's delicious. Desert Heat is floor candy.
I think about it a lot, Johnny. I think about it a lot.
For example, doesn't everybody want to see a scene where Danny Trejo gives Van Damme a tender foot massage for some reason, and then they sing a song about cigarettes and whiskey? And yeah, I said cigarettes.
Cigarettes and whiskey and wild, wild women, they'll drive you crazy, they'll drive you insane.
But there are a few other Yojimbo elements in it as well.
Do you like samurai movies?
Well, I don't know. I've never been to one.
Well, they're like westerns, only Japanese. Anyway, there's a special showing on in Sun City. One of my favorites called Yojimbo.
Also, while Mifune, as the Yojimbo, threw a stick up in the air to decide which way he was going to go, and Bruce Willis in Last Man Standing spun that whiskey bottle.
Cigarettes and whiskey and wild, wild women.
Hey, no more of that. You're both tone deaf, and it hurts my ears. Anyway, in Desert Heat, JC starts shooting wildly in the air, and what chooses his direction in the end is the attention that he gets.
Look at this. He could have killed me. But what in the hell are you shooting at, boy?
Bringing the gang to him.
Hey, Johnny! What do you think?
It's inventive. By the way, I did ask Danny Trejo for an interview, but he just gave me a list of excuses.
Well, I got things I gotta do then. I have to look at the moon, talk to the smoke, listen to the wind.
So there's not really much you can say about that. Now, the movie has a strange tone that's charming, but also kind of off. For a bunch of it, it feels like Danny Trejo might just be in Jean-Claude Van Damme's head. There's all this talk about the coyote and how he just pops up at weird times and places, but it seems like only Van Damme sees him. But then everybody can see him, and he fights people, and then he's killed. So, like, he must have been alive, but then at the end, they have a Fast and Furious 7 moment where he's riding a ghost motorcycle next to them in the desert, okay? And Van Damme asks his lady, like, can you see him? And she's like, yep, I can see him. But, like, he's dead. But she can see him. But then why make him seem like he was sort of a ghost to begin with? Well, like, was that a reshoot? Did they do different iterations of the script? There's, like, another part where Pat Morita is reading a newspaper, okay, about Pearl Harbor. But there are contemporary cars in the movie. So maybe the newspaper is just really like a joke? Or like maybe it's just really old and that's the joke? I don't know. Now, I'm sure it's nothing more than a series of terrible rewrites. But remember I said that I had a theory of why it's called Inferno? Okay, I prefer to imagine that the entire movie was a kind of purgatory of lost souls. And JCVD goes there to save his friend and ends up saving others in this town, right, to give them a better afterlife or something, like as in Dante's Inferno, okay? It's not hell, it's a place that you go to get sorted off into your afterlife, and Dante's Inferno isn't just for the strictly evil bad guys. Even the rest of the cast of characters might be seen as what Dante called the uncommitted. These, end quote, these are the souls of people who in life took no sides, the opportunists who were neither good nor evil, but instead were merely concerned with themselves, and also outcasts who, quote, race around through the mist in eternal pursuit of an elusive, wavering banner, symbolic of the pursuit of ever-shifting self-interest. So that's kind of cool. What else? He meets a beast, and that would be the coyote, and then is rescued from the depths of darkness by his friend, who says he's also a coyote. Now, I don't really think that this is based on Dante's Inferno in any serious capacity, but I could be convinced that there was a draft at some point inspired by a trip to the afterlife or purgatory, and I just think that theory adds to the enjoyment when you're watching Desert Heat.
Why does he always repeat himself?
I don't know.
You thought we were done. Look, I just wanted to leave anime last so that we could close the loop, starting in Japan and ending here as well. In 2007, Kaze no Yojimbo ran for 25 episodes as an animated TV series, and although it does feature a stranger entering a corrupted town run by two gangs, it doesn't feel much like a Yojimbo movie. There are 25 half-hour episodes, so they'd have to alter the story and expand it, understandably. But interestingly, I think there's another movie that would be better compared in my opinion. Bad Day at Black Rock. It's about a one-armed veteran who comes to a secluded mining town looking for a man named Tomoko who's missing, I guess. The entire town's hostile to him as he tries to ask for information. That's pretty much the plot of Kaze no Yojimbo. The animation also isn't really anything special either, to be honest, but you can judge for yourself. Now, one other example in animation that also touches on the science fiction genre, which we haven't seen yet with Yojimbo, is the first episode of Star Wars Visions called The Duel. It's really incredibly stylized and beautifully rendered anime, and while it doesn't use the plot of Yojimbo specifically, it clearly had the movie in mind when making this episode, so just worth a mention here. Now, I thought initially when I was making this that we would end this chapter here and I would do an entire other chapter on comic adaptations of Yojimbo. And I'm sure there are more than the ones that I found, but basically there wasn't much. There was a manga that went at least 4 volumes, but it's in Japanese. I don't even know if it was translated into English at any point, and what makes it particularly difficult to find is that the moment that you type in Yojimbo, you get all the results for Usagi Yojimbo. And if you add Akira Kurosawa, then you get the movie or the manga Akira itself. And of course, Usagi Yojimbo does actually take inspiration from Kurosawa's work, as well as many other Shambara films, but it doesn't really ever employ the plot of Yojimbo. But there is one comic that stands out that does. One of the last great comics to be published at Vertigo, Get Jiro, written by Anthony Bourdain with art by Langdon Foss in Volume 1 and Ale Garcia in Volume 2. And that was all that got made before Bourdain passed away, but the entire concept is a culinary-styled reiteration of the Yojimbo plot, so I have to mention it here. Jiro makes sushi in a world where food is the prime force in culture, and with all the power in who has the best chefs, and he gets caught up between 2 culinary forces. And again, we hit upon a bunch of key moments from Yojimbo, from the division of 2 corrupted factions at war, to the very Kurosawa gang face-off, or Jiro offering his allegiance to either side, to the point where it all catches up with him. This book is very beautifully rendered, very violent, and pretty damn funny. So in conclusion, this story has been written by Dashiell Hammett, adapted by Akira Kurosawa, Sergio Leone, the Coen brothers, Walter Hill, Takashi Miike, Albert Payan, Sergio Corbucci, and Anthony Bourdain. It's an archetypical story that is played out in feudal Japan, the Spaghetti West, a fantasy Conan world, a prohibition gangster town, modern day action in a small desert town, and a post-apocalyptic future. So what we really need here, what we're missing, what I would like to see, is a horror genre adaptation, maybe with a fun tone, like Bruce Campbell enters a town run by werewolves on one side and vampires on the other, or how about a Chinese version? Like, I'd like to see an old school wushu kung fu version of Yojimbo, maybe directed by Stephen Chow, a cameo by Jackie Chan, or a prison movie where the new plays off.
See you next Saturday.
You bet.